Captain Riley Thompson was having what he thought would be another boring patrol shift in the outer rim of human space. His coffee had just reached the perfect temperature when suddenly every alarm on his ship started screaming at once. The emergency communications board lit up like a Christmas tree, flashing red and orange warnings that made his heart skip a beat. What the hell is going on? Thompson shouted over the noise, nearly spilling his drink all over the control panel. His crew scrambled to their stations as the automatic systems tried to lock onto whatever was sending the distress signal. Lieutenant Jake Martinez was already at his post, fingers flying over the communications array. His face went pale as he read the incoming data. "Captain, we're picking up a massive distress beacon. It's bad, sir. Really bad." The main screen flickered to life, showing a grainy transmission from deep space. The image was breaking up, filled with static, but Thompson could see enough to make his blood run cold. It was a Zephyrian colony ship, one of those massive civilian vessels that carried entire families to new worlds. But this one was dying. The ship looked like it had been through a meat grinder. Huge chunks of metal were floating away from its hull, and Thompson could see atmosphere bleeding out into space like ghostly white clouds. Emergency lights were flashing along what remained of the ship's superstructure, and debris was scattered for miles in every direction. "Sir, I'm getting life signs," Martinez reported, his voice cracking slightly. "Over 10,000 people are still alive in there, but their life support systems are failing fast. They've got maybe 6 hours before." He didn't need to finish that sentence. Thompson leaned forward in his command chair, studying the tactical display. Who did this to them? Pirates? Raiders? Martinez shook his head grimly. "No sir, this wasn't random. I'm detecting weapons signatures consistent with Korthak Dominion warships. Military-grade plasma cannons, the kind they use to crack planetary defenses." The captain's fist clenched around his coffee mug so hard that his knuckles turned white. Everyone in human space knew about the Korthaks. They were a warrior race that believed might made right, and they had a nasty habit of enslaving or destroying anyone they considered weak. But this was different. This was pure murder. They attacked a civilian colony ship? Thompson asked, not wanting to believe what he was hearing. "Are you sure about those weapon signatures?" "Positive, sir. The damage patterns are consistent with a full battle group attack. Captain, they didn't just attack this ship. They hunted it down like an animal." Thompson stood up and walked to the main view screen, staring at the dying Zephyrian vessel. Somewhere in that twisted wreckage were families, children, elderly people who had never hurt anyone in their lives. They had been traveling to start new lives on a distant world, carrying nothing but hopes and dreams. And the Korthaks had torn them apart just because they could. The transmission from the Zephyrian ship was weak, but Thompson could hear the desperation in the alien captain's voice as he pleaded for help in broken standard English. "Please, anyone who receives this message, we need immediate assistance. Our engines are dead, life support is failing. We have children aboard. Please help us." Thompson had seen a lot of things in his 20 years of military service, but something about that plea hit him right in the gut. These weren't soldiers or warriors. They were just regular people trying to survive, and they were counting on someone, anyone, to care enough to help them. He turned to Martinez with steel in his eyes. "Open a priority channel to Earth Command. Maximum encryption." "Channel open, sir." Thompson took a deep breath and spoke clearly into the transmitter. "Earth Command, this is Captain Riley Thompson aboard the UES Meridian. We have a Code 7 situation in Sector 47. Repeat, Code 7. Civilian genocide in progress by Korthak forces. Requesting immediate fleet response." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, then a voice came back sharp and clear. "Meridian, confirmed Code 7. Are you reporting active genocide against civilian populations?" "Confirmed, Command. We have visual confirmation of Korthak attack on unarmed Zephyrian colony ship." 10,000 civilians in immediate danger. They need help now. What Thompson didn't know was that his transmission had just activated something that hadn't been used in over 50 years. Deep in the military archives of Earth Command, a protocol that most people had forgotten about suddenly came alive. It was called the Civilian Protection Directive, and it had one simple rule: when innocent people were being murdered, humanity would respond with everything they had. In bases scattered across human space, ships that had been mothballed for decades suddenly received activation orders. Crews who thought their fighting days were over got emergency calls telling them to report for duty immediately. The Ghost Fleet, humanity's most feared and secretive military force, was about to wake up from its long sleep. And the galaxy was about to learn why you should never make humans angry. Deep beneath the Colorado Rocky Mountains, in a war room that most people didn't even know existed, Admiral Kate Morrison was watching something that hadn't happened in over 30 years. The massive holographic display that dominated the center of the room was lighting up like a pinball machine, with red dots appearing one by one across the entire map of human space. Each red dot represented a warship coming online, and Morrison had seen enough of these displays during her career to know that what she was witnessing was historic. These weren't just any ships. These were the vessels of the Ghost Fleet, humanity's most legendary and feared military force. Ships that had been sitting in hidden bases for decades, gathering dust and waiting for a call that everyone hoped would never come. "Admiral, I'm getting reports from every sector," Colonel Mike Davis said, his voice barely able to hide his excitement. Davis had been Morrison's right-hand man for 15 years, but even he had never seen anything like this. "The activation signals went out less than 2 hours ago, and we're already getting responses from ships I thought had been scrapped." Morrison walked closer to the holographic display, studying each red dot as it appeared. Her weathered face, marked by scars from her own combat experiences, remained completely calm even as the implications of what was happening began to sink in. "Give me the numbers, Mike," she said quietly. Davis consulted his tablet, scrolling through reports that were still coming in. 47 warships confirmed so far, with more responding every minute. "We've got the UES Vengeance coming out of the Saturn shipyards, the Iron Will launching from the Pluto Defense Station, and the Last Stand is already warming up its engines at the Mars Orbital Facility." He paused, checking his data again to make sure he was reading it correctly. "Admiral, they even pulled the Reaper's Edge out of mothballs. I didn't think that ship could still fly." Morrison's eyes narrowed slightly at the mention of that particular vessel. The Reaper's Edge was legendary among military circles, a ship that had earned its fearsome reputation during the bloodiest conflicts in human history. It had been retired after its last captain said it was too dangerous to keep in active service. "If they're activating the Reaper's Edge, then someone upstairs is taking this very seriously," Morrison said. She turned to face Davis directly. "Mike, what's the average age of these crews? How long has it been since most of these people saw real combat?" Davis winced slightly before answering. "Most of them haven't fired a shot in anger since the Martian Rebellion, Admiral. Some of the younger crews have only done training exercises and patrol duty. But the senior officers..." He gestured toward the display. "These are the same people who fought alongside you during the rebellion. They know what real war looks like." Morrison nodded slowly, remembering those brutal months when human space had nearly torn itself apart in civil war. She had been a young captain then, commanding a destroyer in some of the fiercest battles humanity had ever seen. It was during that conflict that she had earned her nickname, Hell's Angel, not because she was merciful, but because she was absolutely relentless when it came to hunting down enemy forces. The rebellion had ended with Morrison personally accepting the surrender of the rebel leadership, but not before she had chased them across 3 star systems and through 2 nebulae. Her pursuit had become the stuff of military legend, and every officer in the Ghost Fleet knew the story. "Admiral, permission to speak freely?" Davis asked. "Granted. These crews might be rusty, but they're still the best humanity has ever produced. And they're angry. Word about what happened to that Zephyrian colony ship has spread through every military channel we have. The crews are volunteering for this mission faster than we can process their applications. Morrison walked over to the tactical display, studying the projected route to Zephyrian space. It would take the fleet nearly 18 hours at maximum burn to reach their destination, assuming nothing went wrong with the older ships during the journey. What about supplies and logistics? She asked. Half these ships have been in storage for years. Are they combat ready? The supply ships are already launching, Admiral. Every major human shipyard is working around the clock to get ammunition, fuel, and replacement parts to the rendezvous point. The civilian contractors are donating materials and labor without charge. Everyone wants to help. Morrison allowed herself a small smile at that news. It was typical of humanity to rally together when innocent people were in danger, regardless of whether those people were human or alien. There's something else, Admiral, Davis continued. Intelligence reports that the Korthak forces responsible for the attack are still in Zephyrian space. They're not just hitting one ship and running. They're conducting a systematic campaign against civilian targets. Morrison's smile disappeared instantly, replaced by the cold expression that had made her enemies fear her during the rebellion. She had seen genocide before, and she knew that every minute they delayed meant more innocent people would die. She turned to face the communications console. Open a fleet-wide channel. Channel open, Admiral. Morrison's voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded respect for over 3 decades. All vessels, this is Admiral Kate Morrison. You know why we're here. Innocent people are dying while we speak, and we're the only ones who can stop it. I don't care how long it's been since you've seen combat. I don't care if your ship is older than your grandchildren. We have a job to do. She paused, letting her words sink in across the fleet. Set course for Zephyrian space. Maximum burn. Time to remind the galaxy why humans don't lose wars. Warlord Grakstar the Destroyer was having the time of his life. The massive Korthak commander sat sprawled across his ornate command throne, which was decorated with the bones of his previous enemies. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he watched the main screen showing his fleet's latest conquest. Below them, another peaceful Zephyrian colony world was burning. The sight of the defenseless cities being reduced to ash filled Grakstar with a deep sense of pride. This was what the Korthak Dominion did best. They found weak civilizations and crushed them completely, taking whatever resources they wanted and leaving nothing but death behind. It was the natural order of things, as far as he was concerned. The strong survived and the weak died. Report, Grakstar rumbled in his deep, gravelly voice that made his bridge crew flinch whenever he spoke. His tactical officer, a nervous Korthak named Vex Nor, quickly consulted his instruments. Sir, the orbital bombardment is proceeding as planned. Their defense platforms have been destroyed, and their cities are offering no resistance. We estimate complete pacification within 6 hours. Grakstar's massive head nodded approvingly. The Zephyrians were exactly the kind of prey he enjoyed hunting. They were a peaceful species that had never developed serious military technology, preferring to spend their time on art, science, and philosophy. Such weakness disgusted him, but it also made them perfect targets. Any word from their government, he asked, hoping they would try to negotiate. He always enjoyed crushing their pathetic attempts at diplomacy. They sent several surrender offers, sir, but as per your orders, we ignored them completely. Their planetary leaders are still broadcasting pleas for mercy. Grakstar's laughter boomed across the bridge. Mercy is for the weak. Continue the bombardment until nothing moves on that planet. He was just settling back into his throne to enjoy the show when Lieutenant Kexdan at the sensor station suddenly straightened up with alarm. Sir, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching our position. Unknown vessels dropping out of FTL drive. Grakstar's good mood evaporated instantly. How many ships? Are they Zephyrian reinforcements? Kexdan's claws clicked nervously against his control panel as he analyzed the incoming data. Negative, sir. These aren't Zephyrian vessels. The energy signatures are completely different. I count 47 ships total. The warlord's eyes narrowed dangerously. 47 ships was hardly a threat to his armada of 800 warships, but he didn't like surprises during his conquests. What species? Are they from the Galactic Council? Unknown, sir. The ships are using technology one don't recognize in our databases. But sir. Kexdan's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Their formation suggests they're military vessels. Heavy cruisers, battleships, and what looks like a few dreadnoughts. Grackstar stood up from his throne, his 7-foot frame towering over his crew. Someone had the audacity to interrupt his conquest, and whoever they were about to learn a very painful lesson about Korthak's superiority. Put them on screen, he commanded. I want to see who's stupid enough to challenge the Dominion. The main display shifted from the burning planet below to show the approaching fleet. The ships were sleek and angular, with a design philosophy that was completely foreign to anything in Korthak military databases. They moved in perfect formation, their engines burning bright blue as they approached at a steady pace. Sir, they're hailing us, reported the communications officer. Grackstar's lips pulled back in a savage grin, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Accept the transmission. Let's see what these fools want before I blast them into space dust. The screen flickered, and suddenly Grackstar found himself looking at something he had never seen before. A human face appeared on his display, and even though he had never encountered this species, he could tell immediately that this was someone who had seen serious combat. The human's eyes were cold and calculating, with the kind of hardness that only came from years of warfare. I am Admiral Kate Morrison of the Terran Defense Force, the human said in a voice that carried absolute authority. You will cease hostilities immediately and surrender your forces for War Crimes Tribunal. For a moment, Grackstar was so shocked by the audacity of the demand that he couldn't speak. Then the absurdity of the situation hit him, and he began to laugh. The sound echoed through his bridge like thunder, causing several of his officers to cover their ears. Human, he said between fits of laughter, do you have any idea who you're talking to? I am Grackstar the Destroyer, conqueror of 17 star systems and killer of billions. My fleet has 800 ships, each one capable of reducing a planet to rubble. He gestured broadly at his tactical display, which showed the overwhelming numerical advantage his forces possessed. You have 47 vessels against my armada. You are outnumbered more than 20 to 1. What could your pathetic little fleet possibly do against the might of the Korthak Dominion? Admiral Morrison's expression didn't change at all during his entire speech. She simply stared at him through the screen with those cold, deadly eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but somehow more threatening than all of Grackstar's shouting. You're about to find out, she said simply, and then the transmission cut to black. Grackstar stared at the empty screen for several seconds, his laughter dying away as he realized that the human had just hung up on him. Nobody had ever had the disrespect to end a conversation with Grackstar the Destroyer. Nobody had ever been that dismissive of his power. Sir, Vexnor said nervously, what are your orders? Grackstar's face twisted into a mask of pure rage. These humans had just made the biggest mistake of their short lives. He was going to enjoy teaching them about Korthak's superiority, and when he was done, their broken ships would serve as a warning to anyone else who dared to challenge him. All ships, battle stations, he roared. Prepare to show these humans what real power looks like. Lieutenant Commander Tom Wilson had been in the military for 12 years, and he thought he had seen everything. But as he stood on the bridge of the stealth frigate Silent Death, watching Admiral Morrison's fleet drop out of hyperspace, he realized he was about to witness something that would be talked about for generations. The human fleet materialized in perfect formation, 47 ships appearing simultaneously in a display of coordination that would have impressed even the most experienced military observers. But what happened next wasn't what anyone expected from a fleet that was outnumbered 20 to 1. All stations, this is Admiral Morrison, came the calm voice over the fleet communications. Execute Operation Thunderstrike. Show them what happens when you hurt innocent people. Wilson felt his stomach drop as he realized what was about to happen. The court hacks were expecting a traditional space battle, with ships lining up and trading fire until one side retreated or was destroyed. They had no idea that humanity had spent decades perfecting a completely different style of warfare. Cloaking systems online, reported Lieutenant Bobby Chen from the tactical station. We're invisible to their sensors, Commander. They have no idea we're here. The Silent Death, along with 5 other stealth frigates, had materialized directly inside the Korthak formation. While the enemy was focused on the main human fleet approaching from their front, they had no clue that death was already among them. Torpedo tubes loaded and ready, called out Ensign Lisa Parker from the weapons console. Her voice was steady, but Wilson could see her hands shaking slightly. This was her first real combat mission, and she was about to fire the opening shots of what would become known as the most devastating space battle in galactic history. Fire, Wilson ordered quietly. What happened next would be replayed on military training screens for decades to come. 36 antimatter torpedoes launched simultaneously from the stealth frigates, each one targeted at a specific weak point in the Korthak ships. The enemy had no warning, no time to raise shields or take evasive action. The explosions were visible from 3 star systems away. "Holy hell," Parker whispered, staring at her tactical display in disbelief. "Commander, we just took out 12 heavy cruisers with that first salvo. They didn't even know what hit them." But the stealth attack was just the opening move. While the court hacks were still trying to figure out where the torpedoes had come from, the main human fleet opened fire. And what they unleashed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The UES Vengeance, Admiral Morrison's flagship, fired its main plasma cannon array in a perfectly coordinated pattern. The beams of superheated energy cut through space like invisible swords, and when they hit their targets, the results were catastrophic. "Jesus Christ," Parker gasped, watching her sensors in amazement. The Vengeance just took out their entire second battle line with one salvo. 3 dreadnoughts just, gone. Completely vaporized. Wilson had heard stories about the Ghost Fleet's capabilities, but seeing it in action was something else entirely. These weren't just warships. They were instruments of precision destruction, operated by crews who had spent their entire careers perfecting the art of space warfare. Captain Mark Johnson's voice crackled over the fleet-wide communication channel. Johnson commanded the heavy cruiser Iron Will, and his ship was currently carving through Korthak formations like a hot knife through butter. "All vessels, maintain fire discipline," Johnson's calm voice cut through the chaos of battle. "Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to end this quickly and decisively." The human ships moved through the Korthak formation with surgical precision. Each vessel knew exactly where it needed to be and what it needed to destroy. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary risks. It was warfare reduced to its most efficient form. Wilson watched his tactical display as Korthak ships tried desperately to respond to the human attack. They fired their weapons wildly in all directions, hoping to hit something, anything. But the human fleet seemed to anticipate every move they made. "Their formation is collapsing," reported Chen. "Half their command ships are already destroyed, and the rest are trying to retreat." But retreat wasn't an option. The human fleet had positioned itself to cut off every escape route. Any Korthak ship that tried to run found itself facing a wall of human firepower that vaporized it instantly. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. When it was over, 800 Korthak warships had been reduced to floating debris and expanding clouds of superheated gas. "Commander," Parker called out, her voice filled with disbelief, "I'm reading maybe 30 or 40 Korthak ships fleeing the system. The rest are gone." Wilson nodded grimly. He could see the surviving Korthak vessels on his display, running away as fast as their engines could carry them. They were broadcasting on every frequency they could access, sending out desperate warnings about the human fleet. "Sir, I'm picking up their emergency transmissions," Chen reported. "They're telling everyone who will listen to stay away from human space. They're calling us, well, the translation software is having trouble with some of their words, but it's not flattering. Wilson almost smiled at that. The court hacks had come here expecting to destroy another defenseless colony world, and instead they had run into humanity at its most dangerous. They had learned a lesson that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. Humans might seem peaceful most of the time, but when innocent people were threatened, they became something else entirely. All ships, secure from battle stations, Admiral Morrison's voice came over the communications. Damage report. Wilson checked his own ship's status and was amazed by what he saw. Silent death reporting, Admiral. No damage, no casualties. All systems operating normally. Similar reports came in from across the fleet. 47 human ships had just destroyed an armada 8 times their size, and they had done it without losing a single vessel. The galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Morrison walked slowly through the corridors of the Zephyrian colony ship Harmony's Dream, and what she saw there would stay with her for the rest of her life. The ship's interior looked like a war zone, with twisted metal and damaged bulkheads everywhere she looked. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls, and she could still smell the acrid smoke from the fires that had raged through multiple decks. But despite all the destruction, there was something beautiful happening aboard this damaged vessel. Human medical teams were working alongside Zephyrian doctors, trying to save as many lives as possible. She watched as Lieutenant Commander Rachel Torres, one of the fleet's chief medical officers, carefully treated a young Zephyrian child who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. The little alien was scared and crying, but Torres was speaking to her in soft, gentle tones that somehow transcended the language barrier. "How many survivors do we have?" Morrison asked Commander Pete Williams, who was coordinating the rescue operations. Williams consulted his tablet, scrolling through the latest reports from the medical teams. "Final count is just over 8,000, Admiral. We lost about 2,000 in the initial attack, but considering how badly damaged this ship was, it's amazing that anyone survived at all." Morrison nodded, but her expression remained grim. 2,000 innocent people had died simply because they had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. They had been families, children, elderly Zephyrians who had never hurt anyone in their lives. The thought made her angry all over again. She was still thinking about the senseless loss of life when she heard footsteps behind her. Morrison turned to see the Zephyrian captain approaching, and her heart almost broke at the sight of him. Captain Veltar was an older member of his species, with the kind of gentle face that suggested he had spent his life helping others. But now that face was streaked with what she recognized as Zephyrian tears, a clear blue fluid that flowed from their large, dark eyes when they were emotional. "Admiral Morrison," Veltar said in heavily accented standard English. His voice was shaky, and it was clear that he was struggling to find the right words. "I have been trying for hours to think of something to say to you, but I cannot find words that are big enough." Morrison studied the alien captain's face, seeing the genuine gratitude and amazement there. She had encountered many different species during her military career, but the Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy for their honesty and emotional openness. When they showed gratitude, it came from the heart. "Your people," Veltar continued, his voice growing stronger as he spoke, "they traveled so far to help us. They risked their lives, their ships, everything, to save strangers they had never met. How do we thank you for something like that? How does anyone repay such a debt?" Morrison felt her usual military composure soften slightly as she looked at this broken but grateful alien captain. She had seen a lot of tragedy in her career, but she had also seen the best of what people could do for each other. Today had been one of those days when the best had won out over the worst. "Captain Veltar," she said gently, "in human culture, we have a saying that explains why we came here today. We believe that no one fights alone. When innocent people are in trouble, when families are threatened, when children are in danger, humans respond. It's not about thanks or repayment. It's about doing what's right." Veltar's tears flowed more freely at her words, but Morrison could tell that they were tears of relief and gratitude rather than sorrow. "Your species is remarkable, Admiral. In all my years traveling through the galaxy, I have never encountered people who would do what you have done for us today. What neither Morrison nor Veltar realized was that their conversation was being recorded by news drones from a dozen different galactic media outlets. The story of humanity's intervention was already spreading across the galaxy faster than light-speed communication could carry it. On the capital world of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were being called as politicians and diplomats tried to figure out how to respond to this new development. For decades, humanity had been seen as a young, relatively primitive species that was still learning how to navigate galactic politics. Most council members had assumed that humans were too focused on their own internal affairs to become a major player in galactic events. They had been completely wrong. Ambassador Lixandra of the Council's diplomatic corps was frantically reviewing intelligence reports about human military capabilities. "How did we miss this?" she asked her aide, staring at tactical analyses of the battle in Zephyrian space. 800 Korthak warships destroyed by less than 50 human vessels. That's not possible with the technology levels we thought they possessed. Her aide, a nervous young diplomat named Kex Tun, shuffled through his data files. "Ma'am, it appears that human military technology is far more advanced than our intelligence services believed. They've been developing weapons and tactics in complete secrecy for decades. But the political implications went far beyond just military technology. Within days of the battle, dozens of peaceful species were sending diplomatic requests to Earth, asking for protection against various threats in their regions of space. The humans had proven that they were willing and able to defend innocent people, regardless of species or political affiliation. The Altarian Trade Federation requested human protection for their merchant convoys. The peaceful colonies of Vega asked for human patrol ships to defend against pirate raids. Even some members of the Galactic Council quietly approached human diplomats about mutual defense treaties. Commander Williams approached Morrison as she continued her inspection of the rescued ship. "Admiral, we're getting reports from Earth Command. Apparently, the communication channels are being flooded with messages from species we've never even heard of. Everyone wants to know if humans will help them with their security problems." Morrison looked out through one of the ship's damaged viewports at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between solar systems, she knew that other threats were watching what had happened here. Some of them would be deterred by humanity's display of power, but others would see it as a challenge. "Williams," she said quietly, "send a message to Earth Command. Tell them that the galaxy just got a lot more complicated. The rescue of the Zephyrian colony ship had done more than save 8,000 lives. It had announced to every species in known space that humanity was no longer content to stay on the sidelines of galactic affairs. Earth's children had stepped forward as protectors of the innocent, whether the galaxy wanted protectors or not. And in the vast darkness of space, ancient things that had slumbered for millennia began to stir, sensing that the balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted in ways that no one could predict. The age of human dominance had begun.